Hello, my name is Michael Kaplan, and I am the co-chair of the Thomas R. Porter Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm here with two of my esteemed colleagues, people who I respect very much. These are individuals who I reach out to professionally for professional guidance on some very challenging projects, and I've known these individuals for many, many years. First, I want to introduce Laurie Maston, who is also co-chair of the Thomas R. Porter Lifetime Achievement Award Council. And I want to introduce this year's recipient of the award, Richard Claywell. What's really special about this year's presentation is that each of the three of us knew Tom very, very well. We knew Tom, we worked with him, we were involved in programs with him. I had the privilege of working with Tom on everything that I did at the NACVA. We developed programs together, we taught programs together, we challenged each other, we laughed, we did everything we could to make these programs the best we could for the people who attended. We worked together for a period of about 11 years, and Tom passed away. He was the professional's professional. He was the guy we all aspired to be when we grew up. I remember the day in a program that we were teaching, one of our students who didn't show up to the program, we found out that he spent the whole day sitting in the classroom next door. He went into the wrong program, and it wasn't until the end of the day that he realized he was sitting in the wrong class and didn't learn any of the legal stuff he was supposed to learn. Tom, when he heard about that, he turned to me, he said, "Michael, go to dinner on your own. I'm not going to join you for dinner because we've got a student here and I need to spend several hours with him, bringing him up to date and teaching him those things that he missed by being in the wrong classroom." That was Tom. And not only was he so committed to teaching and to the profession, but he was committed to the community and to his family. He adored his family. He was always involved in activities that just made the world a better place. So we created an award in his memory, the Thomas R. Porter Lifetime Achievement Award. And each year it's awarded to the NACFA member who has demonstrated exemplary character, leadership, and professional achievements to our industry, to the business valuation industry, to the financial forensics industry, to the general professionalism, and to the community and to the world. And this year, it's really an honor for us to be presenting this award. Laurie, I know you have a few words to say, so the stage is yours.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. And it's just such a pleasure and honor to be here with both of you today, especially, again, because we all knew Tom so well. There are some recipients who didn't know Tom quite so well. And I just want to share real quick, my perspective of him. He was just such a beacon in the darkness for me when I met him, because he, exactly like you said, he was so willing to step in and assist and answer any question. And it didn't matter if he'd been asked the same question 5 times. He was very patient in how he answered and responded to the question. He was always, genuine in how he, treated people and just random people coming up and talking to him at conferences and things like that. But, my biggest takeaways, there's 2 really. One is one that I've used in practice, ever since I kind of learned the lesson from Tom. And that is, try my best to speak in plain language, straightforward language, always, whether it's in my report or whether it's in, testimony or describing something to a client, that there's nothing gained by making something more complicated than it needs to be to the person who is listening. And that's a huge lesson that I take away from him. But the other is just kind of the silent commitment to doing whatever it takes to get something done, period. And that showed through in his teaching, in his interaction, with the membership of NACVA, and also in his community. So it's just a pleasure to be here with Richard today and to be granting him this award. Richard, do you have some thoughts and memories of Tom before we begin?
I do. I remember, many years ago, we would actually physically go to conferences. I think I started to come back, but I always remember seeing him there. I remember talking to him a few times. I think I've asked, if I remember right, I asked him. He was an attorney, and I'd asked him a couple of questions about the legal system, and he was always helpful to say, well, this is how this particular aspect of it works. So I really appreciate his effort to spend just a little bit of time with me, getting me up to speed on some different topics.
That is great. That is great. So now we all know who Tom is. Let's transition. Let's transition over to talking a little bit about who our recipient is this year. Richard Claywell. Richard, I've known you since, it was 1996. That was a long time ago.
Long time ago.
And we first crossed paths when I was an attendee, a participant, a student in the CVA training center, in the Business Valuation Training Center. And Richard was one of the instructors. And I remember vividly that which you taught us, and how passionate you were about teaching and how concerned you were about everyone in the course really getting their arms around it. And Richard, I mean, you were involved in everything that was going on. I mean, you're an old timer as I am. Laurie is a lot younger than either of us. And you're, certainly one of the pioneers in the business valuation financial forensic arena. You've got a few credentials, and I think I counted 11 or 12 credentials. You have the NACVA credentials, the CVA, the MAFF, the ABAR. In addition to that, there are other credentials that you've earned that you had to work really hard for, as you did for the NACVA credentials, and you put it all together. I mean, you've got a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge. I know there are times that you and I have spoken and you've provided, just a lot of guidance, and you've shed a lot of light on what would otherwise be complicated situations. You are, and I'm speaking to those who are watching this video. Not only does Richard have the credentials, but he has taken all that he's earned in terms of education and credentials and given back through the organizations. You've held so many positions in the NACVA, so many board positions, including the executive advisory board. I could go through and read the names of all the boards. You were the Texas State Chapter President of the NACVA. You were on the Exam and Grading Committee, the Certification Exam Grading Team. You were on among those individuals who created the CFD credentials, Certified Fraud Deterrence. You were on the Government Valuation Analyst Board. We can go on and on and on. And you've held similar positions in other segments of the valuation of financial forensics community. I mean, you're really, really into it. Just, how many publications have you authored? how many there's so many publications that you've been a contributing author, sole author. You've taught courses for years and years and years. You've trained hundreds, if not thousands of people in our profession. Your speaking engagements and presentations, just totally, they speak for themselves, and they speak loudly as to who you are. But I want to step out of the profession for a moment. There's an organization called the Vietnam Dust-Off Association. You're familiar with that, Richard, aren't you?
I am, yes.
And I want our listeners to hear about that organization from you, because I mean, it's impressive. Your role in it is impressive, but so is what the association does, and what you do comes from the heart, and it's really important. And it's important to our country. It's important to our well-being. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, currently I serve on the board of directors of the Vietnam Dust-Off Association. Most people have no clue what dust-off is about, so I'll give you a quick tour of what that is. I was a medic in Vietnam, and I was called a dust-off medic. And what that is, it was the air ambulance service. We were unarmed because the Geneva Convention said we were non-combatants. People would get into a battle. If you've ever seen the movie We Were Soldiers, and they flew helicopters in while people were still fighting, that's what we did unarmed. We typically could not get gunships to do that. Got shot at multiple times almost every day. We were out there flying. You pick up the wounded, you would treat them for a number of different types of injuries. A lot of those were amputations and gunshot wounds. Take care of them until we got them back to the hospital, and hopefully a lot of them lived. Today, what the Vietnam Dust-Off Association does is we try to help other individuals in our Dust-Off Association that are having problems, not necessarily financial problems. A lot of it deals with PTSD. And the reason for that is, if I were to tell you about some of the missions, you would say, no, that's impossible. But that's what we did. And a lot of guys are suffering from that. So when we get together, and even on the phone, the guys that are suffering from the PTSD, when they start talking about what's bothering them, a lot of times other guys will say, I remember that mission. I remember doing that, or I've done something similar to that. So it gives them somebody to talk to, which eases their pain. And I'm just really glad that's what I'm doing right now.
That's great. I know you have a few questions for Richard, Laurie.
Well, I do have a couple of comments first, and there's just so much similarity between my experience with, Tom Porter and Richard, that I just have to point this out, is that the commitment to the profession is very strong in Richard. I've for 30 years plus, Richard started in business valuation the year I graduated from high school. And he's been, full bore since then. In the early formation of NACVA, he just jumped straight in, pulled everyone up behind him. I know a little bit. He, at the time, he's like 8 years of hard experience and valuation. And he's like, I can make this machine work. I can help these people. I can do things. He jumped straight in and volunteered to do whatever needed to be done. And he didn't seek accolades. And that has so impressed me. Plus, all along, every year, you look at, Richard, you look at your resume and the things that you've done, and there's a strong trail. There's not like a few things here and there, and then like a skip of 7 or 8 years and a few other things. You have constantly and consistently been adding to this profession, from the things that you even just post on your website. There's so much, it's a wealth of knowledge of things that you just share with the professionals as well, who, you know, if they so choose, they can pick up that information and learn from that. But you know, you've created a situation around you where you're constantly, you know, changing, you know, ideas that we have in the profession, adding little, you know, question marks to what it is that we've always done. And then assisting, answering what those, you know, the question, you know, what's the answer to those questions? I mean, that is just so impressive to be, you know, long in the tooth, so to speak, on that commitment. And I know that that commitment is, you know, reaches well beyond just the profession. But I just want to point that out because it's just, to me, it's an incredible commitment that you've had, you know, provided to all of us. And I totally have benefited from that. So I appreciate that. Question, though, is Richard, I've known you for a long time. You're from my, you know, I was born and raised in Texas. You're still practicing there. I'm out in Colorado now. And I've always had a strong affinity for you, probably just from, you know, being a Texan. But I would like to ask you one question. What do you think within, just let's hold it within the profession for a second. You have held so many incredible roles. As you look back over those 30 plus years of involvement, not just doing the work, but the involvement, is there one or two things that you can look back and go, you know, that was a pivotal thing that I did. I'm super proud of that. I mean, I know that you're not a bragger, but I'm asking you to brag on yourself.
Well, I probably still won't brag on myself, but one of the things that kind of touched me, I guess, was a number of years ago. Well, if people will call, I will help. I just don't have a problem with that at all. That doesn't bother me a bit. But one of the things that happened, I got a call from a guy named Paul French. And I think all of us here on this call know Paul French. And I apparently had helped Paul French get started with doing what Paul does. I didn't realize that, but I know in the early stages of his career, we had multiple conversations. And he thanked me for helping him develop his career in doing valuation work. It was totally unexpected. I wasn't anticipating that. But I would just hope that, you know, the people that have asked me questions and I've helped them with whatever, that they really appreciate it. They've learned from it, and that they just don't make the mistakes that a lot of people make.
That is great. That is great. Well, I think it's time for the presentation. We've learned quite a bit about Richard, or a little bit about Richard, because I know there's a lot more. So it is an honor and an absolute privilege to present the Thomas R. Porter Lifetime Achievement Award for 2023 to Richard Claywell. And there's no one more deserving. You certainly have all of the qualifications. You present the character, the professionalism, the commitment to the profession, the commitment to the world, and this has just been great. And may you continue on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Both of you, I appreciate it.
Well, I have to say that I'm so very honored to know you and to be able to call you a friend in the profession. And I'm super excited that you have received this award. Very well deserved. Very well deserved.
Well, thank you, Laurie. I appreciate it. With what I've done in the past, I was not doing it to get accolades from anybody. It was just to try to help other people benefit from the experiences that I had. So I really do appreciate that.